Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome to the first of our 31-day Digging Deeper Bible study of the book of Proverbs. So as I've mentioned in previous videos before, beginning today, for the next 31 days, we'll be posting a new video from each new chapter of the book of Proverbs, covering all 31 chapters in 31 days. If you're planning to be involved with this Bible study, I would really encourage you to plan on reading at least one chapter of Proverbs every day corresponding to the day that we're on. That's going to help you be prepared for when you sit down with this video and begin to think about what we're talking about. You're going to be able to check out these videos on our GNG Facebook page, on our app, on our website, so I would encourage you to stay connected that way. And if you're so willing to kind of like and share and comment on those videos, that would be super awesome and helpful to us as we try to get the word out about the wisdom literature that God has provided for every single one of us. So, but enough of the directions. Let's kind of get down to work on our first day of the study of the book of Proverbs. We'll begin, as you might have guessed, with Proverbs chapter 1. Now, if you haven't read chapter 1 yet, I would encourage you maybe even to pause this video and go read chapter 1, at least the first 7 verses, and then come back to watching the video because that'll be really helpful to you. Now, during this morning's lesson that I gave at GNG, I referred to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 as almost the thesis statement for the whole book of Proverbs. In other words, the whole book of Proverbs can really be summed up in just that one verse. Well, what is it? It goes like this, Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Simply put, to recognize that this is God's world and that He made it is an absolute necessity for living well in it and for having true knowledge. It's basically like saying you can't live wisely or live well in the world if you ignore how the Creator of the world intended for that world to be lived in. We talked at length about this idea this morning. So if you want to access that, you can go to the GNG website or the app and you can check out that lesson. But for the purposes of our particular discussion today, I want to hone in on the fact that this verse really seems to draw a distinction between two groups of people, the wise or the knowledgeable people and the fools. Right? In fact, you can reasonably say that this verse basically narrows down the entire world of people into two groups, wise people and foolish people. The wise people are those who recognize that this is God's world and they live trying to play by God's rules. The Bible calls that wisdom. The Bible calls those people wise. But fools, consequently, are those who reject God and who refuse to align their behavior to His commands. But what I want to do this morning is go a little bit more, or this afternoon, I guess I should say. What I want to do is ask a different kind of question. Take a moment to think about something that's really very important. Why should we want to be wise? Think about that question for a second. Why should we want to be wise? I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of things that the Bible calls wisdom or that the Bible calls good, right? That are hard, that are difficult, that are challenging, that are even frustrating. And there's a lot of things that the Bible calls unwise or sinful that are really fun and enjoyable. So we have to ask this question, why should we actually want to be wise? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons, and I've come up with a few, 4 in fact, and there's probably more. But I think chasing wisdom is a really good thing for at least these 4 reasons. Let me give them to you. Reason number 1, a wise life is a better life. A wise life is a better life. This is not rocket science, guys. The wisdom provided in the Bible, and especially in the pages of the Proverbs, if applied with consistency in a person's life, will very likely yield a better life, a more enjoyable and joyful life. I mean, think about this. Many of the Proverbs center in on daily principles and practices that help us avoid doing really stupid things. I mean, that's kind of the point of the book of Proverbs. Hey, there's some stupid things you could do, don't do them. And there's loads of Proverbs that really hone in just on very practical things. And if we think back on some of the poorest or worst decisions that we've ever made, I don't know about you, some of those are coming back to my mind right at this moment, right? The odds are that if we had listened to biblical wisdom and we had allowed it to guide us in a different direction or to change those particular behaviors, it would have helped us avoid a lot of troubles and issues that have come up in our lives. And the same is true right now. If we will be willing to listen to the wisdom that we read in this book of Proverbs and in the Bible in general, it's probably going to yield a better life. So, I mean, if we think about it, a wise life just is a better life in general. Reason number 2, a wise life hurts fewer people. I mean, think about it. A wise life hurts fewer people. Unfortunately, our poor choices don't just cause us pain. They hurt others too. Think about some of the things that are addressed in the book of Proverbs. Affairs, stealing, unkind words, lies, greed, pride, envy, gossip, abortion, murder, taking advantage of people. All of these things are basically covered in the book of Proverbs. And they all have one thing in common. The fallout of those kinds of behaviors hits a lot more people than just the folks that commit them. So one of the best arguments for chasing wisdom or becoming one of those people who tries to live a wise life is that we will hurt less people with our lives if we listen to that wisdom. So a wise life just hurts fewer people. Reason number 3. A wise life inspires others. I don't know about you, but as I look back on my life and on the people that have inspired me the most, the folks that I most want to be like, the common denominator for all of them, the people that have had the biggest impact on me, is that they largely made good decisions. They just generally made wise choices. They had a lot of wisdom to offer for sure, and some of the things that they've said have impacted me greatly. But I probably learned the most and was inspired the most by the simple daily example of people who lived out wisdom in their lives. You've probably had the same experience. Wise people impact us at a deep level, and their example challenges us to be different than maybe we otherwise would be. Now, unwise people might be famous. Unwise people can be fun. Unwise people can be glamorous. They may be enjoyable to watch or to kind of, be looking over their shoulder at their lives. But I would guess for most of us that the people who have impacted us the most and have inspired us in the greatest possible way were those people whose lives were full of good decisions and wise behavior. Reason number 4. Let's be honest, guys. If God is real, and if he really did create the world, then a wise life in conjunction with what God has said is the only life that makes sense. The great philosopher Blaise Pascal kind of discussed this idea in something he created, which has become known as Pascal's Wager, right? Pascal posited that God either exists or he doesn't, right? Well, that's simple enough, kind of makes sense. And he believed that every single one of us has the freedom to make the choice whether we believe that God exists or God doesn't. But his wager, in other words, Pascal's thinking about this and he's going, if I'm a betting man, right, I'm going to wager that God exists. He argued that it was better to believe that God exists because in the end, if you're wrong, you've lost nothing more than some temporary pleasures. In other words, he was saying, well, if I believe that there's a God and I live like there's a God, but there actually isn't, all I've really lost is just some temporary doing what I want. All right, in the end, I'm dead and I don't know any different. But he says, if I choose not to believe and choose not to live as if there are a God, and I'm wrong, the consequences are eternal and disastrous. And so he says, the reality is we had better wager that God exists and live as if God exists, because in the end, if we're correct, we will have avoided an eternity of separation from God and have lived a life of connection with God both now and forever. Simply put, if God exists and he created the world, then our opinion isn't really all that important. If he exists and he made the world to operate in a certain way, then whether we like it or not, we should try to live that way. To live as if God doesn't exist is absolutely nonsensical if he does. It only leads us to bad choices that hurt people, that hurt ourselves, and that inspire only the worst among us. Guys, I think this is really pretty clear. Proverbs 1:7 says it. There's only two kinds of people in the world, the wise and the fools. And the question for us today is, what kind of person do we want to be? Because there's really good reasons to chase wisdom and to chase being the people that God has called us to be. Guys, that's day one of our Proverbs study. I hope to see you back here tomorrow as we discuss more of the book of Proverbs. We'll see you later.